you go with that notion of, oh, I think I can do this in SwiftUI, and you start doing it, and then, oh, but just this piece I'm missing it, either because, I don't know, we're supporting iOS 14 or 15, and like there might be something available in the newer SwiftUI version, but we can't yet use it because we have to support 2 iOS versions before. Really like how the way we structure UI, let's say programmatically. It is okay, but like I much prefer it in SwiftUI. Just it's nicer to read, easier to understand, like grasp in your head what is going on in that UI. Just programmatic.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dru, and welcome to the Kodeco Podcast. In this podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the latest app development tech talk. Now, here's the show.
This is the Kodeco Podcast. This episode was recorded on Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. I am your host, Dru Freeman, with my co-host, Susannah Skyer Gupta.
Thanks, Dru. Today on the show, we have Danijela Vrzan. Daniela has been working as an iOS developer for the past 3.5 years. She currently works at The Score. Daniela is here at Kodeco, an article author and a bootcamp mentor and an occasional conference speaker. If you guys were at Deep Dish Swift in Chicago last year, you would have gotten to see her speak. She's amazing. So if you see her on a conference list, think, I want to go to that conference to see Daniela. In her career, Daniela has worked in multiple companies on different projects, and she's used both UIKit and SwiftUI interchangeably. So thank goodness she is here to tell us about it.
Daniela, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dru. Thank you, Susannah. Happy to
And
be
yes,
here.
it was a wonderful speech at Deep Dish last year.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So we want to focus on not just the UIKit to SwiftUI transition, but whether or not that transition is something that needs to happen, or whether or not, we want to focus on both and talk about that transition that's occurring as well. So I feel like I'm being a little redundant, but before we get into that, let's talk about you. How did you first find yourself in iOS programming, and where would you say you are on that journey?
Oh, that's a whole topic on itself. I give a 30-minute conference talk just to talk about my career. But yeah, in a short version, I was a civil engineer for about 10 years. Did the high school for a civil technician, university, worked in the industry, and just did not like it. And my husband was the one who introduced me to programming, which, like in all my prior education before that, I was never introduced to it before, which is kind of a sad thing, but it's okay. I'm here now. And then I just tried a little bit of web development, liked it, and then decided to go back to university, get a computer science degree. And at that point, I'm from Croatia, so we moved to Toronto, to Canada, and I had to find a job in a new career I knew nothing about, the country I knew nothing about. It was definitely a challenge.
Wow.
And then Kodeco actually had their first boot camp in 2020 during the community care events back in the black times of COVID. I applied, got accepted, and then graduated there. At the same time, it all happened in 2020. I became an article author for Kodeco. I got my first job, and I was invited to speak at a conference. So you can say that I've been iOS developer, conference speaker, and writer for about 3.5 years, all at the same time.
That's wild. And it's wild that it all happened as you landed in a new country and during COVID.
Yeah.
So listeners, that means you can do this. If you're thinking, I'm going to turn it all around and become an iOS dev, it can be done.
Definitely.
So let's focus in for a moment on the differences, what UIKit is and what SwiftUI is for newer developers. How would you break them down simply from a 40,000-foot view and talk about what they're doing and how they're different?
Yeah. So SwiftUI and UIKit are both UI frameworks, right? That let us create and manage our UI elements to create our apps so users can interact with them. I like to say they're kind of like car transmissions. right? So you have a manual, which we can say it's UIKit, and then automatic, which is like a SwiftUI. UIKit, like you had to manage everything on your own, manage states. It was very, I would say it was much harder. There could have been like all sorts of issue where you forget to update the state. You had to manage everything on your own. Um, it was also UIKit is also an imperative UI. Then like you had to track different states, write a function, call it, and when the button is tapped, you manage the state. And then came SwiftUI, which is sort of like an automatic, like you don't have to manage gears on your own. It does everything for you in the background. You just press drive and drive it, right? So it's like a declarative UI, and you don't have to manage state on your own. It does all of that in the background, which maybe sometimes you want to have a little bit more control. But yeah, sometimes it's kind of good that you don't have to think about it. So yeah, that's how I look at
I
it.
like this analogy using the car transmission. That's really a great way to think about it. And yeah, with the manual transmission, there is a whole lot of being present, being in the moment, and yeah, you can take a UI kit and really make it scream if you know how to work the gears. Swift UI is definitely a lot simpler. Now, have you been transitioning projects from UIKit to Swift UI?
Yes.
So how do you find that process?
So I think a lot of companies are doing that. Obviously, like SwiftUI is the future of UI frameworks. In the past 2 years, I work in the companies who most of the code base was UIKit, and a lot of companies these days even have most of their code still in UIKit. And we are slowly moving towards refactoring parts of code into SwiftUI, or any new feature that you implement. Let's do it in SwiftUI instead, while the background, like the skeleton, is still in UIKit. It doesn't happen overnight, especially on large projects in big companies, big code bases. It's a lot of work, and it probably take years until, like, I'd say maybe fully transitioned, like a fully Swift UI.
So there's nothing
Even
in
if
Xcode that we can just like, some menu where it says convert to Swift UI and then it just happens.
yeah, no, it's a manual work.
That would be very, very nice, but I just don't see that happening because it is in its own way rewriting the widget code. So when you are converting, I guess it's depending on if it's a large project or a small project. Do you take a piecemeal approach? What is your approach to making this jump?
So definitely smaller parts of code, like smaller feature or smaller components. If we're creating, I don't know, like let's say a new feature that doesn't exist in Swift UI, piece by piece, like a lot of underlying code is still UIKit, but just take smaller components and try to refactor. There's a lot of issues that could come up along the way. But yeah.
So how do you spot something that's like, if you're working on a bigger project and going in like, okay, I want to bring some Swift UI into this project anywhere they'll let me. How do you know where's a good place to suggest it? Like what would be a good example of a feature that could be coded in Swift UI, and what would be an example where, oh, maybe don't try that one because I can see you're going to have problems?
Yeah, it's kind of hard with SwiftUI. I just had a talk with a colleague recently, and I won't quote his words exactly, but he says, the thing about SwiftUI, it's really awesome, but it's that last 4% when you're almost done and you realize there's something that's quite missing and you can't do in SwiftUI, and then you realize, okay, I guess I still have to do this in UIKit. So you go with that notion of, oh, I think I can do this in SwiftUI, and start doing it, and then, oh, but just this piece I'm missing it, either because I don't know, we're supporting iOS 14 or 15, and like there might be something available in the newer SwiftUI version, but we can't yet use it because we have to support 2 iOS versions before. So that's the issue there.
I found drawing is a bit difficult in SwiftUI. I know that there is Canvas and the capabilities of drawing, but I find that working in UIKit's Bezier curves tends to still be a little bit easier. Do you work at that level, or do you find that?
I haven't done any drawing in UIKit, but I did do a little bit of it SwiftUI. It is a little bit hard to grasp, but yeah, it takes some time, but I think in the end you get there.
So
I mean, we do know there's things that have to be SwiftUI, right? So like if you got a widget, it has to be SwiftUI. I was going to say if you're making a companion watch app, it has to be SwiftUI, but I don't think that's true, is it? I think you can do your watch app in UIKit.
I remember that you used to be able to do them in UIKit. I don't remember
Yeah,
if
I
they
don't
fully
know if
switched
that's.
over yet or not.
And then
Yeah, I'm
I
not
know
sure.
there's some paywall stuff, and maybe this is just related to RevenueCat. Maybe not. Maybe it's not a general like StoreKit
Well,
framework stuff, but there's some paywall stuff that has to be SwiftUI. So those are things that this is me putting pieces onto the Lego stack. If you're building those Legos on top of the building you've already got, then those ones have to be SwiftUI.
I know that StoreKit 2 lends itself better to SwiftUI, but it will work with UIKit. So if you were to say that you have things that you like about these two stacks and things that you didn't like about these two stacks, let's start with UIKit. Can you talk about things that you like about it and things that you don't like about it?
Oh, the thing let's start what I don't like about UIKit. That's easy to answer. Not very fond of the way that UI is written. So I'm a fairly new iOS developer, right? So I started just when SwiftUI came out. At that point, I was figuring whether to learn UIKit or SwiftUI, and I'm glad I did learn UIKit before. But it's just I don't know. I don't really like how the way we structure UI, let's say programmatically. It is okay, but like I much prefer it in SwiftUI. Just it's nicer to read, easier to understand, like grasp in your head what is going on in that UI. Just programmatic or even auto layer like storyboards. Let's not even go there. What I like about UIKit, I guess sometimes I wish I had a little bit more control. And I didn't understood this when I was just starting out. Like some more seniors developers were telling me, like SwiftUI is awesome, but you can do this and that in UIKit. Like you can have more control. You can do specific things, which in SwiftUI you cannot do yet. Or like a lot of the things is being done in the background and we don't have access to it. And then I didn't understood that until I recently worked with something. I was like, okay, now I understand what they meant.
Yeah, I suppose we would be remiss if we were just talking about UIKit and SwiftUI about not mentioning at least core graphics, which really begins to get closer to, for lack of a better term, the metal, but metal being yet even deeper. With core graphics, you have an easy attachment to it from UIKit. You have the
can work
ability
with core graphics and SwiftUI though.
you have the ability to get to core graphics from SwiftUI, but sometimes you do have to detour through UIKit to get there.
So I'm ironically, as a Kodeco person, I'm slowly working my way through, as I think you are also, Dru, the Paul Hudson SwiftUI course. And one of the things he has us do is venture into the core graphics just to the extent like core image filters, just like easy stuff, right? But you see that, you've got one kind of image from SwiftUI, and then you turn it into this and you turn it into that and you turn it into the other thing, and it's like everything that could possibly be an image, let's use every type, because there are all these different types as you try and work between
Yeah.
these frameworks.
So have you done any integration where you're using both UIKit and SwiftUI in the same interface?
Yes, I have.
So I know that it's using hosting controls. Can you talk about your experience using hosting controllers and hosting controls?
And can you explain what those are for listeners who might not fully understand it, such as me?
Yeah, a UI hosting controller helps us implement. I think it's in both ways. I know that's when we're adding SwiftUI code in UIKit. I think we're also using UI hosting controllers.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know I've recently had to do the other way around. I had to add some UIKit in a full SwiftUI app because the SF Safari view controller is not still available in SwiftUI. That's also another thing. But to go back to the topic, yeah, so I worked on a code like when I had to add just a small component of a SwiftUI view in a UIKit, and that's mostly been when it comes to like table views. For example, let's say a cell is a SwiftUI view, but underlying table view is still a UIKit table view. We're not using list or anything. We did create like a lot of custom internal libraries that makes us easily integrate that. It is all a UI hosting controller in the background, but as I said, like with UIKit, you have much more control. And I think it's going to our tables are going to be staying in UIKit for probably for a while because you can
Interesting.
edit so many things. Yeah.
So UIKit for working with tables is still way better than like Swift charts.
Then like lists and forms, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for lists, that's the funny thing is that now we have the Swift charts, but that's thinking more in the Excel mindset of displaying data than just
As
a
opposed to
tabular.
entering it and just scrolling it out,
Yeah, than
looping over it and scrolling it out.
having it sort of look like the spreadsheet itself, just the boxes in
Right.
rectangular views. And I think that, yeah, I agree that UI table is still going to be something that's going to last for a while there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious what else, okay, besides UI table that like, okay, you're gonna have to know that. What are the other UI kit zombies, maybe isn't the right word, but things that have not yet died, have not yet been replaced by a Swift UI version?
Yeah, I mentioned the SF Safari view controller, like that doesn't exist yet in SwiftUI, so you have to use it, implement that in the SwiftUI project.
That's for showing a web view or
Yeah, that's for showing an in-app web view, like a Safari web view
okay.
in the app.
There's no way to do
So it
that
doesn't open
in
external.
Swift UI?
No, like there's a link, but I think the link opens an external browser. It goes outside of the app.
It doesn't
But if
put a
you
browser
wanna,
right inside your app.
yeah, no.
Right.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
And the thing is with that SF Safari view, you also have that capability of bypassing the HTML and saying, well, if I see certain pieces of HTML, I can restructure them or handle them in special ways in my view.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's
Yes. So that's compelling. Like I can see why somebody would want to do that. I wonder if we'll get one of those at DubDub. And I mean a Swift UI one of those.
Well, we're getting close.
Yeah, we are. AV Foundation, if you're working with AV Foundation, anything that I think still has to be through UIKit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that we focus on UIKit and SwiftUI, which is where we do want to focus today. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that there's SceneKit and SpriteKit and all those other ones that lend themselves to specific types of applications.
Is anybody still using SpriteKit for anything? That's something I've wondered about.
I know I am.
Are you? Okay. So you use that in your
But
Pagan
it
Almanac
does.
app?
But there is SpriteKit View and SceneKit View in SwiftUI, so you can basically tear a hole into your SwiftUI app and throw a SceneKit or a SpriteKit View in there.
Oh, that's well described. What does SceneKit do for us? I don't even know.
Basically, one is 2D and the other one's 3D.
Okay. So SceneKit is also like a gaming thing?
Yeah, I mean, I just say 2D and 3D because somebody is always able to come up with something that's either 2D or 3D that is not necessarily a game.
Mm. Yeah, I mean,
enough.
there's stuff that's 3D that's a whole new kind of computing, right?
Mm-hmm. So Daniela, we talked about what you did and didn't like about UIKit. Now we're going to move over to SwiftUI. Talk about the things that you do like and the things that you don't like.
Oh yeah, that's much easier to answer. I love SwiftUI. I really do. It's amazing how simple it is to create UIs. Like I've been working on my own app and just remembering when I was working with UIKit and creating a UI. It took so long to create a UI kit. But in SwiftUI, I would just go about writing, and the previews are really cool. Although I know the previews are available in UIKit as well. But yeah, it's just amazing way we structure UI. I just love SwiftUI. That's what I like about it. Also, I sometimes, well, most of the time, I really like how I really don't have to think about managing the state, that it's done automatically. But sometimes I also wish I had more, more to it. What I don't about SwiftUI, there's a lot of things that are I find still a little bit maybe hard to like reason about. I do come from a UIKit world, and it's just I guess it's just like practice and learning it, especially these new observation macros. It's a whole new thing that's just yeah didn't I don't know if didn't exist before, I think. So just like trying to wrap my head around how it all works.
I think the
Yeah, that
macros were
was
new
new
as of
from
last
Dupdub.
year.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of updates, a lot of changes that yeah, it's you have to keep up to date and just learning and it changed, right? We used to have the state objects, observable object state. Now everything changed to bindable, and it's just like I have to shift and literally learn again everything. So that's maybe a thing that's more annoying, but you know, it's fun. I still prefer SwiftUI.
I think it's so great as a beginner about SwiftUI is that I don't really have to think too hard about this. So if I've set up something where a user can like edit a field, as soon as she edits that field, then behind the scenes, the framework knows this is changed. And so everything where this is displayed has to be redisplayed because it sees that the state has changed and it automatically redraws everything by itself. Whereas I think, and I don't speak UIKit so well, and also can barely drive a manual transmission car, unsurprisingly. I think in UIKit, you have to know yourself that as the programmer, okay, I'm checking, is this changed? If this is changed, I have to think about where do I have to display the changed thing? So SwiftUI is doing more for us.
Yeah, definitely. And like in UIKit, I don't know, you kind of know that you have to manage state on your own, so you kind of know already what you have to do. So maybe it's a little bit easier there. In SwiftUI, there's a lot that happens in the background that you just have to make sure everything is working correctly.
It was confusing. Like if you were just starting to get to know it prior to this past year's WWDC, and then we have a somewhat, like kind of a significant change in how you manage the state with the observation framework and the macros, then it's, if you didn't have it all absolutely down cold, speaking of somebody in that situation, it was a little disconcerting. It's still not hard. It's just like, wait, what do we call this now? What's watching what?
I'm assuming, so you've said that you learned SwiftUI first and then learned UIKit.
No, the other way around.
Oh, you learned UIKit and then SwiftUI.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that the process was a lot easier to learn SwiftUI than it was UIKit.
It was, definitely was, yeah. UIKit was, when I started learning UIKit, I started with storyboards. I found them like much easier to see because they are so visual. It was really nice to display my UI. And it took me a long time to get comfortable and get started with programmatic UI. I was always a little bit afraid of it. I was like, oh, I don't know, programmatic UI. Like I'm afraid of how do you reason about a UI in like lines of code? I can't visualize that because I'm a visual person. But then once you get into it, I guess with more experience, like, oh, okay, I can see it.
It, of course, begs the question, which we're going to ask at some point. So I think I'll just ask it now. So for new people, what do you advise they learn first? Do they still have to learn UIKit? And like when you guys are hiring at your current company, do people like if somebody comes in, they don't know any UIKit, or you like, okay, thanks, but we're done here? Or can you still get a job if you just know SwiftUI?
Yeah, that's a good question. For example, we don't. Our question does. I mean, it's just a UI framework, right? Which there are many frameworks out there. It can be learned. Anything can be learned. What we asking is whether you know Swift and whether you know iOS development. We don't really ask about whether you know UIKit or SwiftUI. Either one can be learned. If you are just starting out today, I would say learn SwiftUI. It's the future for sure, and most of the companies I think are slowly moving towards SwiftUI. If any new features are developed, they are likely going to be done in SwiftUI. But also you have to learn UIKit as well. Start with SwiftUI and maybe learn a little bit of UIKit just so that you're familiar with. And the reason behind is that, as I said, most of the big companies still have most of their code base in UIKit. And so it's going to be much easier to find a job. And once you get the job, to find your way around the code base easier. So you have to know both.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So now SwiftUI UIKit, they translate well across all of the Apple OS. SwiftUI drops so naturally into everything. Have you done any work for Vision OS yet?
I haven't yet. I haven't had time to take a look. I'm working on an iOS app. It's like, yeah, I don't have time yet.
Are you working on your own app as well as your apps for work?
Yes, I'm trying to work on it as much time as I can find. But yeah, I'm making an iOS app.
Would you like to talk about your iOS app?
Well, it's a secret. No. Yeah, it's well, I guess it's a macronutrient tracker app that I'm trying to make for myself pretty much. I need it. I really need it. So just we'll see where it goes.
That's wonderful. And I assume you're weighing more heavily on SwiftUI.
Yeah, so I decided to go with the latest SwiftUI version and support like the minimum iOS 17, which is really cool because I get all of the cool new stuff. I'm using Swift data and everything new so far. I haven't had any issues. So SwiftUI works pretty well. My app is 100% SwiftUI.
Wonderful.
I mean, I think that's it. Like when you're learning or when you're doing an indie project, this is like, that's what's great about being in that situation is you can be like, I'm not supporting any old versions. You're just going to give me what's shiny and new and cool. And that's all I'm going to work with, And then once you release this and everybody's like, that is my favorite macro tracker. I'm only using that one for the next 10 years. Then
now you've got to support.
Then you have a customer base and you must love them and care for them and not
Yeah.
break their devices.
and feed them.
Yes.
So we talked briefly about the fact that this came out, the macros came out recently at last WWDC, and we can't always support the latest OSs, but it's coming up soon. It's just around the corner. June is, of course, Christmas for Apple OS developers. Daniela, with the experience you've had in SwiftUI at this point, what would you like to see if you could have the ear of an Apple developer to say, I want this added to SwiftUI?
Oh, I haven't thought about it yet. Like, what do I want to see? Uh, it's really nice that Swift Data came last year because it's so much nicer to use than Core Data. But I don't know. Let me
Interesting.
think.
Okay.
Yeah, what's missing?
Other than the SF Safari view.
That would have been my answer. Uh, yeah, at this point, like SwiftUI has a lot of cool new things. But I can't think of anything at this point that I would really like to see. Swift charts are really cool, really nice to use in SwiftUI. I've been using them as well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have anything specific. I have to think about it more.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to what AI tools we get built into Xcode. So we will see.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Apple is probably working on something. And it's really nice because like when you think about it, in Xcode they can make a really good use of AI because in Xcode you can only work with Swift minus Objective-C. So you can really do some really good like code completions because it's
Right, exactly.
very
Like they know
limited,
what the
right?
set of knowledge
Yeah, and
is.
they own all of it, so they can do
Yeah,
some pretty cool stuff there.
yeah. I don't know if you guys know, if Daniela or you know the answer, but like we're talking about like when do we need to know UIKit? When do we need to know SwiftUI? I'd say the main message from this podcast is you need to know both. What if you're writing for Vision OS? Do you still need to know UIKit, or is that only SwiftUI?
Oh no, this is having ported my app to the Vision OS. My app is still a good 60%. No, I'd say it's closer to 40% now. UIKit. I have been transitioning a lot over, but UIKit and storyboards still work. Now, I am using
Fascinating.
iPad simulation mode.
Okay.
I haven't really tried anything in native mode, so I'm not entirely sure. I think you can still use UIKit because you still have the UI hosting controls.
Okay. Interesting.
And
So it's fully and completely and solidly still out there everywhere in iOS development, UIKit.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
even though not much people are actually like talking about it. Like if you look at most conferences, most articles published, everything is in SwiftUI.
Right.
Like UIKit is still here. It's still getting a lot of love because a lot of people are still using it. But yeah, we're
Yeah,
slowly moving to SwiftUI everywhere.
yeah, that's coming through really clearly. Like when we talk about learning iOS development, when people are starting out now, it is SwiftUI. But really, then you go to work and it's UIKit. It's both. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm dying to ask you about something I saw on your LinkedIn the other day. So I guess there was this Apple event in Cupertino, presumably timed around International Women's Day, called A Force Together Women in App Development. And you went.
Yes.
Tell us about that. What was it? How'd you get to go? Who was there? What'd you learn? Tell us about the food.
Yeah. It was really nice. I was debating whether I should go when I saw they announced it, and I was like, oh, it's in Cupertino. It's not really. close by, like it's 6 hour flight, like it's on the other side of the continent.
Oh, that's a
Uh,
long flight. You're in
yeah,
Toronto
yeah,
still? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, on the
Yeah,
East
that's a
Coast,
long
and I had
flight.
to fly to West Coast. Like, oh, it's a lot of time. It was just one day of events, and the second day was they had like some workshops that you could sign up for, like Vision OS, design session, everything that they do online they had in person. And then I was like, oh, but I want to go. And I was thinking, with my luck, I will never get a ticket to WWDC. So I was like, maybe this is the closer I could get to Apple Park and like seeing the Apple Developer Center, because like
Right.
you need to have a specific event to go there. You can't just enter there. Like, you know what, I'm going. It's gonna be
Oh,
like
right on.
fun thing to attend, network. And yeah, and I went there. It was really nice. It was full day of like different panels with some experienced Apple engineers, women leaders in Apple. Learned a lot. They also presented some of their Apple Entrepreneur Camp alumni, women who
Oh,
have
interesting.
like made apps and how they succeeded. It was really nice, very inspiring.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
learned a lot. They also had a session on design, how to make great apps. It was really nice. I
This
got to
sounds really
meet,
good.
yeah, I met some new people and some old friends there. I met Michaela.
I was going to
I
say,
It
I
thought
was
knew
really
they,
nice.
Michaela went.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, Michaela was on just last episode.
yeah.
I am so sorry I missed that, but I will see her at Deep Dish. Um, so how many people were there,
I
more or
think,
less?
yeah, we're just talking about it. I'm gonna say maybe around 100 folks, just
Okay.
a
So
hard estimate.
that was a really good call to go then, because it's like a small enough group that you can actually get to know people.
Yeah, yeah, it was really nice. Most of the women there were in the Bay Area, so it was very close by for them to come. Um,
Right.
yeah, so there were a couple of us actually who flew from Toronto and from different areas, so it was really nice.
That's really cool. Good call. And did you get swag and did they feed you nice food?
No swag. Actually, no, I'm lying. I got a really cool women pin.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
and I love pins, so that was for me, that was like wow. And I got a badge that I get to keep. So
Yeah.
Yay.
You wear the pin everywhere to show that you went to that cool event. Well, good. So perhaps if they do it again in the future, I think I might want to go to that too. And it's closer for me. Because
yeah,
I'm
they had
But
in the
one
next
last
state
year,
over.
and this is the second year they're having.
Okay, that bodes well for them doing it in the future, though.
Yeah, it was really nice.
maybe it also is a precursor that they'll start having WWDC be open to the public again.
I
Yeah,
wonder.
I'm hoping for that.
Yeah, I miss WWDC being a networking event.
Yeah, I just missed it entirely, and I wonder if it'll come back in that iteration. As Daniela describes it, though, I think a smaller event where it's 100 people or a couple hundred people, as opposed to, I don't know, a zillion, thousands, I like that would feel overwhelming.
Yeah, but like they had it last and previous year, the State of the Union and the keynote were all in person, right? So that's I went not last year, previous year, 2022. Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't have a
wow,
ticket, but
good
I
for
still
you.
went there. It was really nice because like there was still a lot of events around. Like iOS Dev Happy Hour was there,
Right,
so like I met
right.
hundreds of people whom I know from Twitter only in person. So it's still nice in terms of like networking and meeting with people, even just one day, even if you don't have a ticket.
Yeah, and that is one of the neatest things about going to meetups, to conferences, to the things around DubDub, is like seeing your social network come to life. Because
Definitely.
there are lots of nice people working in iOS development, so it's fun to meet
Yeah, iOS
in real
community is
life.
amazing. It's really
I
Yeah,
fun.
like her.
yeah,
I
very
like our
supportive.
community.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about AI this season, and we're always curious. How much have you been using in your work, in your practice, Have you been consulting with some of the AI tools, or are you pretty much, where do you stand on it?
AI. I knew this question would come up. It's everywhere these days. Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask this question. I honestly don't really use AI that much. Like ChatGPT, right? It's probably the most popular one, I think. I've used it a few times. I find it's really good for solving algorithms, like lead code style questions. If you have to prepare for interviews, like he would try and solve it on your own, have a solution, and ask it to solve it again, and then it would give you a solution. And you can talk to it like, okay, I don't know, don't use an array, use a dictionary, solve me a solution like that, and it actually tells you, and it's a working solution every time I tried it. It's really good. So for that, it's really good. I don't really use it in my day-to-day work. Not that much. I haven't had to yet, I guess. Because
Are you guys allowed where you work to use like Copilot? Or are you allowed to use AI tools
we are not.
where you work? Okay, yeah, because it
Yeah.
varies according to the workplace.
Yeah, I know a lot of companies have that policy, like at least for the time being, I guess, do not use AI. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
because they
I'm
don't
not
want
using.
their
Yeah,
code bases dumped into a public trough of code,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. But even for like personal projects, I haven't really used it. But it's really good for those, like if you need some piece of documentation, like
Mhm.
other than just Googling and trying to find it with all of that information, you could just ask it direct a question and it will give you an answer. And I also use it once or twice to like explain me this piece of code. Like I don't really fully understand what's going on here, so here's this code, like explain to what's it doing. And it gave some really good explanations. So maybe just use it a few times there, but yeah, I don't really use it like every day.
I'm the same in as much as I tend to use it to say, explain what this API call is, or what is the mindset of how this works, and then I can read through it, and I'm not actually expecting it to give me an answer that I have to directly use. I will try to understand the answer and go from there.
Yeah, that's one thing. I tried when it first came out. I was like, okay, what's this thing? Let's see what's going on here. What's doing it? And I asked it to generate me some code. I don't remember really. I think it was maybe app intents or widgets. I don't know. It was like generate this code to do this, and it generated something. I was like, okay, I don't even understand what this is. And I noticed it's made up a framework that doesn't even exist. So it's hallucinated. I was like, oh, okay, look. This is just maybe a little bit annoying. Like I'll probably just go Google and figure it out on my own. So yeah, you have to really be careful to you have to understand, kind of like Stack Overflow, right? You can't just copy paste something from app Stack Overflow without understanding what it's doing. Same goes
I
for
mean, you
ChatGPT.
can, but
Well,
it
yeah.
doesn't lead anywhere good.
And
I'm
also
here to
like
tell you, you can.
yeah, when it comes to ChatGPT, like when it generates text, like I can smell it's written by ChatGPT, because ChatGPT adds so many unnecessary adjectives. Everything is beautiful, pretty. I don't know. It's just like, oh, ChatGPT wrote it.
Yeah, it is. We've been working with it at work to like get us started on some blog posts, and then it's like, oh no, we can't use that. That's just
Yeah.
ludicrous. Like, we like this feature, but this is over the top.
So let's take one more stab at UIKit and SwiftUI. I'd like to ask you, Daniela, looking at UIKit, what has been the area that has given you the most difficulty to work in?
Like tied to SwiftUI or
And let's start with UIKit, and then we'll go to no, just in general,
just
working in a UIKit world. What is one of the more difficult things that you have to face? Because hopefully, by talking about these things again, people who are newer to development can listen in and say, "Okay, I've got the warning. This is going to require a little extra thought, etc."
in UIKit. Well, definitely one of the things I would say would be UI, when I say programmatic UI, constraints, that's one of the things that's maybe a little bit hard to grasp around. And then you could get a lot of console errors like, hey, these constraints are broken. I'm trying to resolve it by breaking this constraint. And then, yeah, trying to fix that, trying to see what's conflicting where is maybe a little bit harder to get. And then another thing is also working with table views and collection views, like cell reuse and all that. It is maybe a little bit hard to grasp, especially if you're coming from SwiftUI to UIKit. Yeah, that would probably be the two hardest things that I can remember.
Constraints are always a royal pain, and
Yeah.
I use storyboards a lot, or at least I used to when I was doing a lot of UIKit initial prototyping. And I would hear about these people who say, well, I never use storyboards. I do everything programmatically. And it would just astound me to hear them doing the constraints on the fly.
Yeah.
So let's shift over to SwiftUI.
I like
SwiftUI. Who knows? Let's shift over to SwiftUI. What area of SwiftUI has been challenging for you?
I would say, well, for me personally, so SwiftUI is fairly new, and like I feel like in the iOS development world, we still haven't found out or figured out some, I don't know, design patterns that go well in there. Like some things that we used to do in UIKit aren't really working in SwiftUI. So we have to find different ways, different things to interact, and then also architecture that we're using to implement our SwiftUI apps, right? Is it MVC, MVVM, TCA? Yeah, that's maybe a little bit hard right now. When I was like starting my app, I was thinking, okay, what should I do? Like everybody's saying run away from MVVM, and then they're saying use model view, just a model view. That's one and TCA. Like, it's so complicated to reason about.
Go ahead and explain TCA so people understand.
Yeah, decomposable architecture. It's I haven't worked with it, so I really don't know how to explain it. But yeah, it's mostly popularized by the Point Free folks. They create a really I'm gonna say it's really complex architecture to architect SwiftUI apps, but everything is pretty much like routing is one component. Everything is how do I say, segmented. People say it's really nice. It's they also say it's very complex for someone who's just starting, especially maybe for junior developers, because there's a lot going on. So yeah, that on a high level, that's what TCA is.
So as you've been using SwiftUI, and you begin to use it at work, how does it work from a point of view of many people at the company doing it and dealing with things like collisions and source control management? Is it pretty much, well, I'm going to go work on this UI and nobody else is going to be working on that while I'm in there? Or do you do a lot of abstractions?
A lot of abstractions, yeah. So every small view is a part of its own file. So everything is well abstracted, like solid principles are there. So it's really easy to work. Honestly, haven't had many issues with like there being many collisions, unlike storyboards, which are just horrible to like if there's merge conflict in there, whole different story. But when it comes to working like in teams with SwiftUI, yeah, as long as you like keep your views small, have that separation, it's there's not gonna be much conflict. It's really nice to work with.
It's nice.
That was a good question.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that clearly sounds like it's a benefit to SwiftUI views versus storyboards. Are there meaningful things we can say about testing and debugging and how that changes when it's just SwiftUI or just UIKit versus the two of them together? What does change? Does anything change?
I was thinking about that question, and there's not really much that changes. I guess as long as your code is well abstracted, everything works. There's not much that you have to change or add in there.
I mean, you're either way, ideally you're still writing tests, right? And ideally you're
Yeah.
still writing UI tests, and therefore that's why you're saying nothing changes, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Like in terms of
Okay.
unit tests, as long as the logic is separated, there's not much change when it comes in terms of that. And also like snapshot tests, just you previews providers and it generates, well, yeah. So I don't think there's any like meaningful to say in there in that topic.
Okay. Where do we see, if anywhere, differences in performance, UIKit versus SwiftUI? Because that's something that if you personally aren't watching it at work, as somebody at work, running some kind of benchmark to see like, oh, if we do this big thing in UIKit, is it better than doing it in SwiftUI?
So we recently at work were trying to, we have a UIKit component that's kind of like tabs in like switching different tabs, and then when you switch, there's an underline that like kind of glides under a selected tab to make sure like it's selected in
Pretty.
UIKit, and it works. Yeah, it works really well in UIKit. It was created many moons ago. And then we want to use SwiftUI, so we tried to recreate it in SwiftUI. It was challenging, very challenging. And as I said, like it's SwiftUI, you can't really do a lot of things. In UIKit, you have a greater control. Although some things like in SwiftUI were much faster to do, but then, as I said, like there's that final 4% where it's just, oh, I need to get this right. This small thing is missing. So in order to like, when you select or when you tap a new tab and that like underline like lights, just for that small simple animation, and then the colors change from the tab that's unselected to the selected one. It's all subtle animation things, that's really nice to see, and you see like in the apps, like developers care about them, right? They're nice to see, and I wanted to replicate that exactly, and then it's a lot of math in SwiftUI to make that work exactly in UIKit. A lot more code as well. We managed to do it, but a colleague found out that the performance was really bad. We were using a lot of CPU, and so in order to like you can open instruments, right, and see that the performance is really bad. And then he managed to. It was just about math logic being maybe a little bit simpler, reducing it, refactoring it. So we managed to get it down. But yeah, there's definitely, you have to watch out just because maybe you have to do a little bit more to make SwiftUI work. When you get it working, just make sure that performance is still good. And you can get it down, right? Just make it work if it's working and then try to refactor.
Right. The classic, right? I've got that,
Yeah.
that on sticky here. Make it work, make it right, make it fast. Yeah. But I'm glad I asked. And so use instruments and see what's happened, and then go back and look at your code and reflect on how you can make that better.
Instruments is really awesome.
So one of the questions we ask all our guests is, you do a lot of tech, and sometimes we need to pry you free of the keyboard. What do you do for fun that is not attached to the keyboard?
Oh, I mean, outside the work, I do work. but yeah, no, when I'm completely away from keyboard, I like to spend time outside, like almost every Saturday. We're outside like 12 hours, like 9 to 9.
Excellent.
Just spending time. That's my weekly dose of like getting some fresh air, because otherwise I do not go outside of my home. I know. But But yeah, that's really nice. Like Toronto is a very green city. There's a lot of hiking trails, and we just love to go outside and just take a walk. And then also during that, we love to try different restaurants. And there's the food scene is really amazing here. I love food. So
I heard Toronto is phenomenal for that. Just like an
yeah,
incredible international food scene.
it really is. The food I tried some really good restaurants, some bad ones, but yeah, it's still nice to try different things.
Are you in Toronto proper, or are you on the outskirts?
Somewhere in the middle, I guess. I'm on the subway line, so I would say maybe that's Toronto proper. Yeah.
Oh,
And the good thing is also like I like to mention that I don't have a car, so like in this past 5 years that I've been here, I walked a lot and I've seen a lot of Toronto. When I talk to my friends who like live in Toronto, they're like, "Oh, I haven't even seen that." Like, yeah, I've been across Toronto, like every road, every street. I just walked it. It's so nice.
it's a
Oh,
fun
right
city
on.
to walk around. It's a beautiful city to walk around.
Yeah, I like it. That's pretty
So,
much it. What I do away. And watch TV shows as well. I love watching TV shows.
what's your current TV show?
So right now we're watching Supernatural.
Ah,
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's okay, I guess. But it's one of those TV shows that you're just watching. You don't really have to think about what's going on. It's just nice thing to relax.
So, speaking about relaxing, this one question that we've had come up a lot this season. It's a year full of strife. There's a lot of stuff going on in the news everywhere. Though I know at least in Canada, Facebook is preventing news from being posted into Facebook in Canada, and I found that rather interesting to discover. How do you find your quiet, your zen during all of the news and the doom scrolling and everything going on? How do you find peace in these moments?
That's a really good question. I guess I don't really follow news that much, so that's one way to like definitely stay outside. Like I am subscribed to a few RSS feeds on Feedly. On Reader. Reader is the app I use. It's a really good
Mm-hmm.
app. Um, Mostly tech stuff, and then I follow like some local news from like Blog Toronto, like some new restaurant that they recommend or some things that are going on. Outside of that, I scroll through Twitter or X, and then Mastodon. But other than that, like I don't watch TV. I found like I can't really listen to podcasts. My mind just wanders off when I'm trying to listen to things. I find that I'm more of a like I have to read it or I have to watch a video. So yeah, I just pretty much stay outside of the news, and I find that to be a really good thing for me. So I just don't have to think about everything that's going on.
That's wonderful.
so what do you think as we are in 2024, a couple months away from WWDC? Is SwiftUI production ready?
I would say it is. I would say it's definitely production ready. As I already mentioned, I'm working on my app. Still early stages. There's a lot of work to do, but it's fully SwiftUI. Apart from as a Safari view controller, which is the only piece of UIKit in there. But I'm using Swift data. I'm using all the new cool stuff. Everything is working really nicely. Haven't had any issues, so I would definitely say that SwiftUI is production ready. And in one of my previous companies, we also created a really big component that was fully SwiftUI in a big app used by a lot of people.
Oh, that's neat. And then that
Yeah,
gives you, like, I'm sure, tremendous confidence that, like, oh yeah, this really is stuff that could be used commercially because you saw it be deployed to a large user base and actually work.
yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely. And one thing that also comes to my mind now that we're talking about it, um, Adam Bell, he's a UI engineer on Netflix. He gave a really nice talk about interchangeably using UIKit and SwiftUI. Like, don't fight whether we should use UIKit only or SwiftUI only. Like, use both and make them work to make your like UIs more performant and more nice. And he gave a really good talk at a conference. It's last year, I think 2023, in Singapore, on how to use both FileMaker apps more performant. It's a really cool talk.
Listeners, I will look for that and see if we can get it into our show notes if it's available.
Speaking of talks, can we expect to hear you talking anywhere soon?
Yeah, I slowed down a little bit this year, but I will be speaking at iOS Dev UK in Aberystwyth in September.
Wonderful.
Yeah, really looking forward for that. It's a really nice conference. So
and do you know your topic yet?
Yes, I will be giving a talk on best-in-class pull request.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, something different. Hopefully it goes well. We'll see.
It will be great. I know it already.
I hope to be able to make it out for this one. That sounds like a wonderful conference.
I know. I would love to. That's definitely on my list. I would love to go to that one year. It tends to conflict with some holidays for me, but
yeah, it's a really nice conference at the
years.
Auburn University, and like we're all staying at the campus. It's really nice. I like it. It's
yeah,
very,
I've heard
how
it.
to say, homey.
I was gonna say that's what people say about that, like because everybody stays on campus and it's not like a major city with like lots of draws to go do things away from the conference, that you really get to know people and it feels like a good group.
Yeah, that's very true.
Daniela, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today and giving a great insight into both UIKit and SwiftUI. Having talked a few episodes ago about the concepts in Android of XML to Jetpack Compose, which really seems to be more of a transition. It really seems to be more of a new set of tools to be used in conjunction. And I think that really helps out a lot of developers in their journey. And again, thank you for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's so fun to see you again and reconnect. And I think my takeaway too is like, I was hoping the answer was, oh, UIKit, we're done with that, Mishigas. Like now you can just do SwiftUI. But that's not the answer. It sounds like the answer is be comfortable, be confident, learn them both, because you are going to use them. You're going to use them together. And
yeah, exactly. And who knows, in a few years we might get a third one.
Oh, who knows?
Daniela, we can find you on Twitter X. Where can we find you there?
Yeah, at Dru Vrzan, pretty much everywhere, on Mastodon as well.
Is it just D and your last name?
Yes.
Thank you.
DVRZAN, yeah?
Yes, correct.
Okay. You can find Susan on social media at Sus Gupta. You can find me at Podcast Dru. We'll have more episodes coming up in future weeks, and I really appreciate everybody for listening. As always, leave a comment in your favorite podcast app. And until next time, that's the show. Thanks so much. Bye.